This is Atlanta BioMedical with a quick video to show you how to replace a model 4100 that has a broken lever. The first step to perform is to remove the two screws that hold the cover. Then remove the top screw that's holding the retainer assembly. And whole retainer assembly is off. The next step, take the transducer seal, remove it from the plate, and just place it into the transducer housing. Then remove the four screws that hold the retainer bottom. Then remove the first retainer bar, second retainer bar, and the gear. The next step, remove the spring from that front pin and then slide the retainer assembly off of the retainer top. Then remove the small socket head screw that's holding the lever and take the bushing out, and then remove the spring from the broken lever. Now you are ready to install the new lever onto the retainer assembly. Take the torsion spring. Note there's a small arm and a large arm. The small one goes down and up against that wall of the lever. Then wind the spring, the long arm, to that position. Then that long arm goes into the small hole in the plate. Then the bushing will get screwed on. As you're tightening this screw, push this lever in that direction. That's what I'm doing with my thumb. And then tighten the screw. The next step is to place the retainer assembly back onto the retainer top. The pin goes through the hole in the retainer top. And then place the spring back over the pin. Then take that assembly, turn it over. Note the pin in the bottom of the lever needs to fit into that notch of the retainer top. The next step would be to put this bar in, the bar that has the little arm right here. Put that bar in that orientation. Then make sure the bar is pressed up against the white front plate. Hold that together. Then push the lever so it's right on the corner of the housing and drop in the gear. Then take the second retainer bar, put it on so it's biased that way. Then the last step in rebuilding the retainer assembly is take the retainer bottom, place it over the assembly, and tighten the four screws. Note these screws are thread cutting, thread forming screws. Do not over tighten the screws. You may strip out the plastic in the retainer top. When you're ready to reinstall the retainer assembly into the transducer housing, it's best and easier to remove this screw and disconnect the flex cable from this connector. Pull back on the latch, and then the cable can be disconnected. Push the latch back down. There's a notch in this cam that needs to be pointed forward. So rotate that cam so the notch is pointed forward, which means this arm will be pointed towards you. That notch will locate this pin in the retainer assembly. So when you put the retainer assembly in, line up that pin with the notch, and that hole will line up put this screw back. Snug up that screw, then it's best as you tighten the screw, push up on this portion of the retainer assembly and then tighten the screw. Note, once that retainer assembly is back in position, that arm, that black arm, should be in the center of that optical sensor. If you just move the lever slightly, that arm swings out of the way, and then when the lever is released, that arm should go back into that sensor. That's how we detect if there's a syringe loaded or not loaded. Then you're ready to reconnect the cable. So pull back on the latch, place the flex cable back into the connector, secure the latch, put the screw back into the ground portion of the cable. One of the last steps is putting the cover back onto the transducer housing. Place the seal back onto the cover. Place the cover onto the transducer housing and secure with the 2 screws. You have successfully changed out a broken lever on a model 4100. After the clutch lever has been replaced, you need to check that the plunger detected is working correctly. With no syringe loaded, the plunger detector should be no. Once the syringe plunger is loaded, the plunger detector should be yes. If the plunger detected is not working correctly, recheck the arm and that cam is positioned correctly on that optical sensor on the board. Since that socket head screw for the retainer assembly was loosened to replace the lever and then retightened, the force needs to be checked and or calibrated correctly with the force gauge and fixture.